So welcome everyone to this webinar. As I mentioned, today we will be sharing enabling writers experience from Nepal and Bangladesh. And our panelists today, we have 5 panelists. We were expecting to have 6 panelists, but one of them was not able to make it. Our first presenter from Bangladesh is Mr. Shenawaz Khan. Mr. Shenawaz Khan works for Enabling Writers in Bangladesh, and he has a vast experience. After completing his post-graduation studies, Shenawaz Khan joined in the Danish International Development Agency, DANIDA, in 1984 as a coordinator of mass education program. In late 1980s, he started working at the national level and contributed in the development of national adult literacy curriculum materials for Bangladesh. In early 90s, he joined Dhaka ASEAN Mission and worked extensively at the national and international level as a material development and training specialist. Under his technical guidance, more than 400 print and digital materials and a huge number of training manuals were developed. Mr. Shenawaz working for UNESCO Afghanistan as a program manager, and his guidance, Afghanistan National Adult Research Curriculum and materials were developed. He designed and helped implement a massive NFE program for 300,000 Afghans. In 2011, Shenawaz Khan joined CINED, an institution of Dhaka ASEAN Mission, as the Chief Executive Officer. And the focus of the CINED is to promote ICT in education and skills training. Shenawaz Khan has 18 international joint publication and many national level publications. As I mentioned, Shenawaz was Enabling Writers project for Bangladesh. You're welcome, Shenawaz.
Yeah.
And accompanying Shenawaz, 2 people, Shahid Islam, the program officer from UNESCO in Bangladesh, will be co-presenting Shenawaz. And another one from Bangladesh is Asfal Hossein Sawa, not sure if I'm pronouncing the name properly, a policy specialist for A2I. He will also be presenting with Shenawaz. From Nepal, we have Seema Acharya, who is also a project manager for Enabling Writers Nepal. Seema is a result-driven professional with 15 years of experience in formal and non-formal education and in-depth understanding of all aspects of project design, implementation, and evaluation. He's experienced in providing technical support on early grade reading and math activities, teacher training, and fidelity to program teams, implementing partners, and national local level government bodies. As a problem solver with strong written and verbal communication skills in 7 languages, including Nepali, English, Hindi, Maithili, Bhojpuri, Tharo, and Awadhi. Currently, Ms. Seema is leading an association of international NGOs, Nepal's Education Working Group, and actively participating in the government of Nepal's early grade reading thematic group for implementation of school sector development plan. So, Seema, you are welcome.
Thank you so much.
Our presentation, as I mentioned, will be looking at the best practices of Enabling Writers program in Nepal and Bangladesh. My name is Aristark Limo. I work for Global Reading Network and Reach, and I'm the manager of the Enabling Writers program. I'll be providing an overview of the Enabling Writers program in general before I invite Shenawaz and his team and the CIMA to share their experiences from their specific countries. Enabling Writers Program was launched in 6 countries in 2016. And as we all know, one of the main barriers to improving children's reading skills is lack of appropriate and engaging materials in mother tongue languages, which has contributed to children being unable to get the reading practices they need in the language they speak and understand, but also the fact that around the world, there are about 387 million primary age school children who are unable to read proficiently. And 2/3 of these children are already in schools. So to address the gap, All Children Reading created Enabling Writers Prize competition to drive the development of a software technology to make it easier, cheaper, and faster to write high quality A-grade reading materials in mother tongue languages. And Bloom software, which was developed by Lead International, won the prize, and therefore worked with Enabling Writers program to create over 3,000 titles in 15 languages in 6 countries, including Bangladesh, Nepal, Haiti, Indonesia, Nigeria, and the Philippines. Enabling Writers program is funded by All Children Reading and a grant challenge for development partners, including USAID, World Vision, and the Australian government, and the University Research Company, URC, and the Global Reading Network support implementation in the 6 countries mentioned in the previous slide. Enabling Writers program has a link to the Global Book Alliance in the sense that it contributes to Global Book Alliance objectives, one of which is to produce well-written, level appropriate reading materials, which are difficult to find in many children's mother tongue languages. And the second objective, which Enabling Writers support, is to expand access to content by providing open licensed downloadable materials that allow electronic use and large scale printing. Enabling Writers program has 3 objectives. One is to develop substantial set of high quality decodable and labeled books for adoption by ministries of education and for use by schools in developing countries. And 2, to develop local capacity for sustainable creation of quality decodable and labeled books beyond the scope of the funded project. And number 3 is to produce a large set of quality books using the Bloom book writing software for sharing via the Global Digital Library, the Bloom Library, and the other online ebook access points. Enabling Writers program was implemented through a workshop approach, where during launch, there are 3 local project staffs from each country were trained to support implementation. And these staffs include Shanawaz and Sima. So they included project manager, who now is Shanawaz, and Sima for Nepal and Bangladesh, respectively. The writing, or sometimes we call them pedagogic trainer, who trains on book writing, and the Bloom trainer who trains on the Bloom installation and how to use it to create the books. So these teams were trained for 5 days by University Research Company, URC, and through Rich Reading Specialist and the Lead Technology Specialist. So the trainees were selected based on their experience on the areas they'd be providing support to the project. These local country teams then replicated the trainings to their local book writing teams, followed by a series of book writing workshops, which included also book reviews and field testing to make sure that these books have high quality which we anticipated. So participants in the writers' workshops included children book authors, teachers, and curriculum specialists. Those teachers were the ones which were teaching in low grades, grade 1, and grade 2, grade 3 in some countries. So writers needed to possess at least a previous experience in writing children books, background in technology, a background in teaching low grade classrooms, understanding of a language to be used in the books, and they were also supposed to have at least basic computer skills. The overall results for the 6 countries is that the program was able to create 3,000 titles. These are the titles which were officially submitted to universities' research company as deliverables. And these titles were in 15 languages. We'll get more details from Sima and Shanawaz on how many books, how many titles were created for a particular language. But also the program managed to train about 497 authors. And these authors were trained on early grade reading basics, also on decodable and leveled book creation, Bloom installation and use, and how to use Bloom software to create decodable and leveled books. All these books, some of the books are already uploaded to the Global Digital Library, and you can follow the link indicated there to get access of these books, and also are available at the Bloom Library through the link which is available. We will share this presentation after the end of this webinar. So the languages included Hausa for Nigeria, because we had a project in Nigeria. We have Indonesia Bahasa for Indonesia, and Bangla for Bangladesh, which Shanawaz was working on, but also Haitian Creole for Haiti. And for Philippines, we had 4 languages: Cebuano, Buhalano, Cagayanon, and Kalanguya. With Nepal, we worked on 7 languages. We congratulate Sima for all those languages. And of the 7 languages we worked on, Sima speaks 6 of them. So it's a very good experience. The languages for Nepal include Awadhi, Bhojpuri, Doteli, Maithili, Nepal Basa, Nepal, and Tharo. You will forgive me, Sima, if I didn't get the correct pronunciations of languages. So that is an overall overview of the project. And since this webinar is for Nepal and Bangladesh experience, we are now going to hear from Sima and Shanawaz on the lessons learned and the best practices during the implementation of enabling writers. And therefore, we are going to start with Shanawaz to share his experience from Bangladesh. You're welcome, Shanawaz.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. I like to first want to share the early reading status in Bangladesh. As you can see in the screen, this is the statistics. There was a report. It's called the National Students Assessment Report. This report published every 2 years from the Department of Director of Primary Education. This is under the Ministry of Mass Education, Primary and Mass Education. If you can see that in 2011, 32% of our students, they were not achieved the national competencies in the language. And in the 2013, it's raised up to 25%. And in 2015, 35% of the students in grade 3, they have the deficiency to achieve the national competencies. And this is the government statistics. If you see that statistic, this is really a very grave situation that 35% of the students cannot read according to the national competencies. And you know that this competency, lack of competency and deficiency actually affect in all other subjects, because if they cannot read in Bangla, the national language, they cannot read the other books also. So this is a very great situation for Bangladesh. Though there are reports that after the grade 3, grade 4 and 5, many of them they overcome, but it is not actually very good to start in a very low level in this kind of a deficiency. So this was the situation, and based on that situation, we actually thought that it should be, this project should increase the availability of the appropriate reading materials. And that's why we developed the reading materials for grade 1 and grade 2. We developed 200 material. Among these 200, 50 is a decodable book for grade 1, and the 150 was the level book. So in Bangladesh, as you know, that we have around 160, more than 160 million people. Only 3 million people live in the tribal areas, and they have their own languages. Other than the 98% of the Bangladeshi, they speak in Bangla. This is the national and official language. That's why we thought that we should develop our books in Bangla language so that it can reach everybody. And this is the cover inner page of two books. The top books is in the decodable books for grade 1, and the lower book is the level book. And we developed 50 decodable books and 150 level books under this project. And we actually followed a very systematic process of the materials development, book development. We can say this is the major 3 steps. One is the preparatory activities, book development activities, and then one of the important thing is that the national level dissemination and advocacy. In the preparatory stage, we spent a lot of time, and we collected all the books developed for the children. This is early grade supplementary materials. You know that in Bangladesh, the government is producing the textbooks. They don't produce any supplementary books. So supplementary books production depends on the commercial book publishers as well as the NGOs. So we collected all the early grade supplementary materials to see what are the contents they are using, what are the language structures they are actually following. And then we do a deep analysis, comprehensive analysis of the government textbooks. Because in our vowels and consonants, so in the government textbooks, they first introduce the vowels, then consonants. So when in which part of the textbook they introduce which vowel, and how many sentences is there, how many words are there, how many times they repeat each of the words, that kind of a very in-depth analysis we did, because we wanted to develop our e-learning books so that it can actually match with the government competency and government syllabus. So that was the thing we did, and based on that, we developed all the books. And then we adopt the project manual. Project has a lot of training manuals and a lot of other books. So we adopted those manuals in our country context. And then we prepare the principles. That principles is very important. We prepare very detailed principles for development of the decodable book, for the development of the level books. And we prepare the guidelines for the teachers, and we prepare the tools for the field test, for the materials development checklist, all these things. And then the first activity we did, it is the orientation workshop with the stakeholders, because from the very beginning, we are very much aware that we need to do for advocacy of this type of books, because this is very new in Bangladesh, that decodable books and level books. So we involved the government and all the stakeholders from the very beginning. So we organized the orientation workshop and invited the people, and we actually tell them that what we are going to do. So in the very beginning, we organized this orientation workshop for the dissemination of our aim and objectives. Then in the book development process, we conducted 4 writers workshop in 4 regions of Bangladesh, 4 divisional cities. And we trained 60 government school teachers through this training, 20 government education officers, and 20 material developers from different NGOs. So these were the group. We developed the capacity of this group. First, we introduced the Bloom software, and then language structure and our analysis of all the books, study reports. And then in this 5 days workshop, residential workshop, the writers, they prepared the 200 books. And in the last day of the workshop, there was a peer review. And when we developed all the 200 books from the 4 writers workshop, we organized the national level review workshop involving all the teachers again, and we bring them in Dhaka and we organize this review workshop. And then based on the review workshop, we reprint all the books and send all the books in the field test, and we prepare a very detailed checklist for field test. And after the field test, we reviewed the books again, and we do the illustrations, and then we finalize the books. And when we have the 200 books in our hand, in the e-books, we organized a national level dissemination workshop. We invited all the education stakeholders, and we actually introduced all the books, what we have developed, and everybody appreciated that this is a very good initiative and the first initiative in Bangladesh, this kind of e-book development based on the very specific criteria of decodable and level books.
Thank you, Shanawaz, for taking us through the introduction and the processes which the implementation took place in Bangladesh. I would like now to invite Sima for the next slide.
Thank you very much. I would like to greet to all participants. Good afternoon from Nepal. So, as you know, Nepal, Limo has already mentioned about Nepal has developed 1400 plus title in 7 languages. According to our Nepal's data, census data, there are 103 languages speaking in Nepal. So out of 123, we have selected 7 languages for the book writing. So these languages are selected based on the heavy coverage. For example, for example, Maithili language. So out of so we have 26 million people here in Nepal. So out of these 26 million, 11 almost 12% people speak Maithili. Similarly, 6% people speak Bhojpuri. So these are the high coverage languages we have selected for book writing. Another reason for selecting these languages, these all languages share the same script we call Devanagari script within a time frame, and so considering the cost-effective ideas, we have selected the same script using users language. So these 7 languages are using the same scripts. So first activity we have conducted. So since we are working in the 7 languages, within the 7 languages, there are a lot of dialect speaking within the languages. So we had to select a appropriate dialect that covers that through that dialect as much as a student can be benefited. So considering that, we have conducted a dialect mapping event. Through dialect mapping, so we have followed the PRA, participatory rural appraisal approach, so community mapping approach. Through that, you can see in the pictures, linguists and the local language experts are selecting appropriate dialect that could be used for the book writing. So the dialect we have selected, the linguists has selected. So they also consider the children as much as children can be benefited for that dialect. So this was the reason for conducting dialect mapping. So for the dialect mapping, we have conducted a 1-day workshop with the linguists in all 7 languages groups, 6 languages groups, sorry. So target for Nepal, our target was 1400 titles, 200 titles per language. Out of that, 150 level book for each language. Altogether, 1050 level book was the target, and similarly, 50 decodable books title for each language. Altogether 350 decodable books supposed to be developed in our targets. Altogether 1400 titles was the target. So we have, as Bangladesh, we have also conducted 5 days residential workshop for book writing in each languages. So before book writing, we have conducted dialect mapping events. So through that dialect mapping, we have selected appropriate dialect for the books, and after that, so we needed writers for the writing those books in local languages. We have selected writers based on the guideline and some criteria developed under the project. So, for example, we have considered writers who has a skill on computer, and so who has a skill and a knowledge on early grade reading, so who has a teaching experience and also has enough knowledge for the language that they supposed to work for the book writing. So after that, we have conducted 5 days residential book writing workshop, and during the book writing workshop, rigorous technical support and instant feedback has been provided through pedagogy trainer and the technology trainer, and as well as we also had our government counterpart from Curriculum Development Center. They have also provided support, technical support for language and content during the workshop. So that is how we have conducted a workshop. So within the 5 days residential workshop, and each languages we have developed. So target was 200. For beyond the target, we have developed almost 244 titles in each workshop. Since our target was 1400, so we reached more than 1400. So 162 writers trained in book writing software in Bloom, and as well as also the decodable and label content was quite new for the writers. They also learn how to develop decodable and the label books using Bloom software. So altogether, we have developed 1,670 books through the workshop. And so after the field testing and the reviewing process, so we have able to finalize 1,438 titles. So out of that, 416 decodable and 1,022 are label book has been finalized. Similarly, out of 1,430 titles, so we have now 76% narrative and 24% informational titles are now available out of 1,438 titles.
Thank you so much, Uma, for taking us through how the process of implementation went. And now we would like to go back to Shanawaz to take us through on the quality assurances processes which the development of these materials went through. So Shanawaz, you're welcome, please.
Yes, thank you. Actually, in the whole process, we were very much concerned about the quality of our titles. And that's why we adopted a very specific and very systematic process. We reviewed the books by the teachers, because who are the developer, they also took part in the review process, as well as the other experts joined with them, the linguistic expert and the material development expert. So this is one of the checklists I'm showing here. This is the things we developed a specific checklist for review and for the development of the decodable books as well as the label books. Say, for example, our main concern was the consistency with the national competency standard, because otherwise our primary school teachers, they will not find these books as appropriate and match with their syllabus of the government textbooks. So that's why always we consider the competency. That's why we did a very comprehensive study of the competency level to identify the competency level of the government textbooks. Then we specify the each page how many sentences should be in the beginning, in the later stage. So progressive development of the sentence in each page, the number of words in each sentence, because we go for simple to complex and easy to difficult the sequence, and we actually have a very big, very nice and appropriate checklist for number of word each page, because we actually prepared the books maintaining all these things, like the page number in each book. Previously, these are the small page number, and then later on it goes up. So, and the number of repetition of the new words, that was also very important, because we repeated the new words in a very systematic way so that the learners, they can read these words fluently. So writing style and the structure, fiction and non-fiction stories, and the illustration, that was a very big thing, because we found hardly good pictures in the Bloom library, so that most of the pictures we have to draw again by our local illustrators. So we draw the illustrations as per the text. And in the field test, based on a very specific field test guidelines, we conducted field test in 16 primary schools. Our target was that 25% of the books should be field tested. So we, in this each of the primary schools, each book has been tested in 2 primary schools, and that's why we actually reached 3,341 students. Among them, 48% were girls. And then there was a focus group discussions with the students, focus group discussion with the teachers also. So in this way, we, based on a very specific guideline, we did all the field tests, and we got the very nice feedback from the teacher, from the students. And based on that, we actually finalize our books later on. And this is the ultimate result. We, as I mentioned earlier, that we targeted the government school teachers. So 100 government school teacher, education official, NGO personnel were trained. During our training session, we trained them on Bloom software and the principles of developing the decodable level books and the early grade basis. So that was the content of our training, and that's why in that way we can say that we actually trained 100 person in Bangladesh who is now working with the government, so that this capacity is sustained in Bangladesh. They are in the government, and we got the high level approval from the director of primary education to involve those people, and they are remaining in the school. So this capacity is sustained. And if you see in the grade, in grade 1, we developed the books considering the whole academic year, and we divided the whole academic year into 7 steps, and each of the steps we developed the books maintaining the competency of the government. And in the number of books, we developed the 50 books for decodable, and in the level books, we divide the whole academic year into 5 steps, 5 segments. In the level books, we also developed for book 2, class 2 or grade 2. So we divided the whole academic year into 5 in when we developed the grade 2 books. And for grade 2, we developed 110 books, and grade 1, we developed 40 books. That was our total 200 books.
Thank you, Nawaz. Go to the characteristics of the books, Nawaz.
Okay, characteristics. Again, I repeat that the main characteristics of our books is the consistency with the government curriculum and contents. All of our books is very much consistent with the government competency level as well as the content level. When they teach as very specific content, we developed our books based on that content, so that the students, they can learn more about that content. So content similarity, consistency, and the curriculum consistency is this very prime concern for our book development. And the consistency, as we know that the competency level increases as the time goes by. So when in the January, the competency of the students, and in June, their competency is not the same. So we develop our books based on this competency gradually increase competency of the textbooks. So in the January, we have prescribed few books, in the February, few books, in the March, few books. In that way, with the very much consistency maintained with the government curriculum. And gender is always very much concerned from in our government primary school textbooks. Also, gender is very much balanced, and we also maintain the gender balance in the content, character, and also in the illustrations. And in each book, there is a specific instruction when they should use this book, because whole year we prescribe the books for the whole year, but every book has a very specific indication that in which part of the year we should use it. And that is
And now we are going to hear quality assurance from Nepal. Emma, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Lemo. So, yeah, so while developing the titles in a large number, so quality was always concerned here in Nepal too. So that we have worked very closely with the authorized agency of government like Curriculum Development Center from Ministry of Education, and similarly with the Language Commission of Government of Nepal. So together we have developed scope and sequences for the languages. We have developed scope and sequences with the government in 5 languages, and for 2 languages, Nepali and the other Doteli. So Nepal has also implementing National Early Grade Reading Program. That National Early Grade Reading Program has developed scope and sequences in Nepali. So another Doteli language is also share the similar language and dialect. That's why Curriculum Development Center and the project team together decided to follow the scope and sequences that has been developed already from Curriculum Development Center. For remaining 5 languages, for example, Avadi, Bhojpuri, Tharu, and Nepal Bhasa. So we have developed the scope and sequences with the involvement of government and the language experts and teachers and the local NGO group. For example, we follow the most frequently repeating sound for those languages. Scope and sequences. Along with that, we have also developed parameters. For example, so which books has to have how many words and how many words per page, how many sentences per page, and font size and illustration. So all these has been decided with the consultation of government. As for example, so government Curriculum Development Center has their own house style for private book production. So some area we have followed the same house style from the government. So scope and parameters has been developed and prepared with the focusing national curriculum to maintain the national curriculum standard. And for the language, so and grammar and inclusion. For example, for inclusion, we are mainly focus on gender and disability, using being careful for using word for the disabled persons. These all are considered while developing books and titles, and also using the illustration. So we have considered the inclusion thing, and so language and grammar also ensure and focus and supported by the Language Commission and Curriculum Development Center. And so active involvement of language expert and representation of Curriculum Development Center was also the very helpful to ensure the quality of language and the content, and also whether the standard is meeting the national curriculum or not. And that we have conducted field testing for all developed book. 25% books have been tested through the several process. For example, so we oriented teachers, almost 70 teachers were involved in book testing, and 30 schools were used for the field testing. So altogether 217 title in average books were tested in the field. So and book review and editing after the field testing, we have also conducted series of meeting with the language expert and curriculum development center staff. The book review and editing and proofreading workshop has been conducted after field testing also. So field testing, so major finding of field testing was teachers were very happy to see, children were very happy to see the books besides the textbooks. So they were very happy to see the titles and the illustration. So that was there. So, and also the book were appropriate for reading instruction. That was the main information came from the field testing.
Now, thank you, Sima, for taking us through the quality assurance. And to sum up on Sima was said, for them, they created about 1,438 books in total, which means it was an average of 200 books for each language, and they were working on the 7 languages. So, Janawas, please take us through on what are the adoption of enabling writer titles strategies are there to make sure that these books go to schools.
Yeah, I think my colleague from UNESCO, Mr. Shahidul Islam, is here. He is Program Officer, UNESCO Dhaka office. So he actually implemented this Bloom software in this material development. I want to request him to speak about his experimentation with the adults.
Thank you. All the participants linked with this and my colleagues here from Dhaka Mission and ETY. Number one, it was a great experience and exposure for me when we started a project called Advancing Mobile Literacy Learning. It was UNESCO global program and piloted in 4 countries, and Bangladesh is one of them. We started this program in Bangladesh in 2015, but initiative was taken since late 2017. Number was that the target beneficiary is different. Since beginning until this, until for me, the target learner was children. But for UNESCO, it is different. It is youth and adult, and for non-formal education settings. Target was basic literacy and livelihood skills training. Since it was ICT-based literacy, we are trying, and our motto was learning anytime, anywhere. That was the motto of our project, of our pilot project. Then I was searching that of what can be done, because for adult literacy learning, there is only 2 material developing agencies in Bangladesh. Sorry, 3. One is government, another one is the Dhaka Mission, and third one is another NGO. But learning needs differs from person to person, since they are the adult learners. And there the materials was not available in the market. So I was trying that what can be done, how the learning needs can be fulfilled. Then once upon a time, I had a discussion with Shahnaz, because he was very involved with UNESCO for a long time. And as you mentioned that he was also working with in Afghanistan. Then he shared with me the information about Bloom soft. I personally tested it first, that how does it work and how it can be either adapted or replicated or scaled up. Then we conducted a needs assessment at our project site. Our project was delivering through community-based community learning centers, simply we call CLC. Yeah. And in the learning assessment, interesting information came out that almost every, that is the choice of learning differs from person to person, differs from learner to learner. Even basic literacy and in terms of livelihood skills training, we call TVET. Yeah. Then again, I came back to Mr. Shahnas with the learning needs assessment. Then he assured that, okay, Bloomsoft can be one of the major tool to fill the individual learning needs. Yeah. And after that, we organized a training. There was 24 learning facilitators and another 4 ICT experts. That is altogether there were 28 persons. We organized a 5 days long training for material development using ICT devices. Yeah. And Shahnaz was very kind that he nominated his trainer, Mr. Abu Bakr. He went to our site. It was in another district far away from Dhaka. It's called Rangpur district. He went there and he conducted 5 days training. And the participants of the training were very much interested, and they learned a lot from the training, that how to develop books and how to ensure its quality, how to use it in the learning centers, and how can further develop another books. In that way, we work with them. And after 1 year, we organized another follow-up training for the facilitators. It was a 3 days training. Yeah. Also, Mr. Abu Bakr Siddiq facilitated that training. In terms of quality, it's a very significant issue and very important issue. For ensuring the quality, we established a non-formal education resource team. It was compressed by government officials, retired teachers, and some experts. So in that way, we developed, we trained our facilitators to develop the books. Nowadays, they are working on their way, but finally 10 books have been finalized, and they are using it still. So on behalf of UNESCO, I should say thanks to Bloomsoft and Mr. Shahnas and his team for introducing this innovative software and easy writing software. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Limo. Now, I would like to request Afzal Hossain Sarwar. He is the policy expert of the A2I and specialist of A2I, and he will explain how they adopted the Bloom software in their teachers training manual.
Hello, very good afternoon, Limo and Sima, and also my friends from UNESCO, and definitely Shahnaz Bhai and his team from Dhaka, Assam Nation. Limo and Sima, probably you have learned about A2I a little bit, but I would like to take 1 minute for give a small introduction about A2I. A2I basically.
Pardon? You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
No, you're welcome.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm saying you're welcome for the 1 minute intro before you go to the.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Actually, A2I was born at Prime Minister's office for as a policy project to coordinate with different ministries. Especially, we are working with Minister of Education and Minister of Primary and Mass Education, because probably you know that we have 2 different ministries in our countries, and A2I is working with almost 53 ministries for different e-service delivery, like health, education, land, and other e-services as well. So for the primary education, one team from A2I were working very closely for different SDG targets, quality education. And you know already Shahnaz Bhai told about the NSA result that is that has a decreased trend from the 2011 to 2013, and even we got the last result for 2015. So even our government, they had a political commitment, and still we got a new commitment from the government to enhance the quality, especially in the reading skills and numeracy skills. That is also targeted in the SDG goal 4.1 and 1. So from the very beginning, when we have been invited from Dhaka Asana Mission to work on this area to improve the reading skills related project through Bloom software for developing supplementary reading materials. So A2I was one of the stakeholders for developing and implementing. And as you know, that A2I is a policy project, and we are continuously discussing and advocating different initiatives for primary education improvement, like we have already working on with the Director of Primary Education and Minister of Primary and Mass Education for implementing multimedia classroom that was already described by Shahnaz Bhai, and Teachers Portal, Mukta Party Learning Platform, and different initiatives. So for this decodable book, 50 decodable books and 150 leveled books as a supplementary materials for enhancing the quality of reading skills among the primary level students. And probably you know the size, it is 2 million kids at our primary level, and we have about 500,000 teachers in our country at the primary level, and that only the government primary institution is about 65,000. So this is a huge number. So for the SRM or this decodable and level book context, we are thinking in a three-pronged approach for this to upscale. Number one is for the training, because we have already embedded these initiatives in our regular training for ICT in education that is mandatory for all the teachers. The reason is, if you Limo give me one big fish for one day, that is done for the rest of my life. But if you help me to learn how to catch fish, then it will everlasting for my life, because according to my need as a teacher, I can develop level book or decodable book for my students. That's why we are discussing with Dhaka Asana Mission and Shahnaz Bhai, and we have already embedded this approach in our regular training system, and already it is implementing throughout the country. And the second approach is for dissemination, because when you are developing lots of books from different corners of the country, so it is needed to keep in a place where other teachers has the access. That's why we have developed a platform we called a Teachers Portal, and right now there are more than 350,000 teachers are interacting and collaborating with each other and sharing their developed content. And we have already taken the decision that we will upload all the level book and decodable books, I mean the 200 books, in our Teachers Portal, so that all the teachers can, from all the parts of the country, can download the content and they can use. And these books, we are thinking that it could be a model for other teachers how to develop and how to use with the specific instruction. And the third approach is the policy advocacy for upscale these initiatives. And probably you will be happy to know that we have already a very formal partnership with the Directorate of Primary Education and Ministry of Primary and Mass Education. So we have already initiated the discussion, policy discussion, how we can go further with reading skills improvement and numeracy skills improvement projects, e-training for the teachers, and CPD framework development, and so on. So it is very much possible to upscale it for all the teachers throughout the country. So I have shared with you the 3 approaches. Number 1 is embedding these initiatives in the regular training system. Then the second part is the dissemination through online, and of course we have offline channels as well. And the third part is for policy advocacy. So we are considering the whole initiatives that we are coordinating with Director of Primary Education and Minister of Primary Education, along with our different friends like UNESCO, UNICEF, Dhaka Arts Animation, and other NGOs and INGOs, to create a ecosystem for education, ecosystem for ICT in education. And we are thinking to include this kind of very innovative and effective approach for our teachers and for our future learners. That's the idea. Thank you very much, Limo.
And thank you so much, Shahidu and Ral, for sharing how are you adopting the books for the benefits of Nepal.
Yeah, now I would like to request Abu Bakr. He will tell you that how the books is now in the Bloom Library, and he is trying to upload these things in GTV.
Thank you, Limo, Seema, and Chano sir, and our colleagues from A2I and UNESCO. We already uploaded all developed books, 200 books on Bloom Library. Everybody can get these books and Bloom Library available here. Also, we conduct all the four divisional trainings and get very good interest from all teachers from different primary schools and all other trainers or other trainees. And now the books already uploaded soon on Global Digital Library. We already provide all books to Global Digital Library for uploading. Hope it will be uploaded very soon. Also, the books will be uploaded to teachers portal, and mentioned ATI personal earlier. So it was very. It will be visible for every teachers and all students of different schools soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are going to hear from Seema now on what is going on in Nepal in terms of adaptation of enabling right titles in early grade reading programs.
Thank you so much, Limo. As I have mentioned already, so Nepal is now implementing a National Early Grade Reading Program. And through this project, we have developed 5 new scope and sequences and parameters, and as I have already mentioned. So National Early Grade Reading Program also has a goal to develop local teaching learning material to support reading competency, to develop reading competency of children studying in early grade. So for that, they are now about to develop teaching learning material in Maithili and Awadhi languages. Since we have already developed scope and sequences for those 2 languages, so National Early Grade Reading Program has now shared, and so it's processed to adopt this scope and sequences and parameters for these 2 languages to develop teaching learning material for our National Early Grade Reading Program. That is one adaptation process is already in progress. Similarly, so right now, World Education is also developing and implementing a lot of projects to develop reading competencies of minority children. So for example, Maithili, Nepali, Awadhi, Bhojpuri and Tharu language books that has been developed under this project will be used for Reading for All project. So Reading for All project is developing reading competency of children having disability and some kind of learning limitations. So that project will be using those materials. And similarly, so we already have used printed and distributed materials in Maithili language in Province 2 for the Sikai and Sangsangai project. For upcoming UNICEF supported projects, so these books developed in Bhojpuri and Maithili language will be used in Province 2. Similarly, Curriculum Development Center also is developing their website to put all the materials related to early grade reading in their website. So they have agreed to keep our materials, 1438 titles, into their website. So that children for those minority language will be benefited through those books. So that is another process. And so World Education is collaborating with OLE, it's Open Learning Exchange. That is only one NGOs here in Nepal, so we provide spaces to keep the titles and children books, children's literature in their website. So now we are collaborating with that Open Learning Exchange to put our titles in their e-library. So these are the adaptation and within the organization, and also with the coordination with the government and other NGOs. So adaptation process for national early grade reading is going on. So this is the adaptation process here in Nepal. So before going to question answer, so I have my colleague here, country director, Ms. Helen Shepa here, and she is namaste everyone. She is the encyclopedia for education here in Nepal. So for adaptation and those things she can answer. And also we have a pedagogy trainer, Mohanji, and have a technology trainer, Sachinji. They can answer about the process and the pedagogy and adaptation and about the technology questions if arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sima, for. Yes, I have one here asking. That is Liana asking, was the publishing industry included either in BD, I think in book development, or in Bangladesh or in Nepal as part of the process, so that the private sector can play a role? Can you have that question? We will take some few questions before we answer that question. We want to know if publishers were involved in Nepal or in Bangladesh.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. So it's very nice question. So we will try to answer your question. So first I would like to share our thoughts on this question to Helen.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. In Nepal, the books, these are open source books. We did not involve the private sector. The government is very concerned that these books, should the private sector benefit financially from producing these books? It's quite a controversial issue here around all early grade reading material books. The preference being that they should be made available for free by projects or by government. I think that's, we think this is an ongoing issue around Creative Commons copyright, that we think that the private, we weren't able to involve them in.
Yeah.
It's like you broke a little bit, but they are saying that they didn't involve private sector, which means publishers, because they were open license. And So it could need some kind of education to get them in, but this point, publishers were not involved for Nepal. So,
Yeah.
Shanawaz, did you involve publishers
Yeah.
in Bangladesh?
In Bangladesh, we did not involve any commercial publisher, but as I mentioned earlier, that in Bangladesh, a lot of NGOs, they are actually developing the books for the children and also adult. So we invited those NGOs who have the material development section, and they joined in our training, and they also developed their capacity. And now most of the NGOs who develop or produce these material for the children, they were involved in the whole process. So they develop their capacity, and they also understand what is decodable book and what is readable book. So in that way, we involve the other publishers. In Bangladesh, NGOs are also the very big publisher of the books for the children.
Yeah, thank you, Shanawaz. There's another question here from Lynn Alexandra. She's asking, is there any way at the present time to quantify the number of children in Bangladesh and or Nepal who could be reached by the books created in the 8 languages between the 2 projects?
Okay, there it is. I can answer. From Nepal right now, we have large new reading programs that we will use these books with, but these books, they've just been completed. So far, we're using them with young children who've been in non-formal education who've transitioned to school, and I think we have about 3,000 children using them in the Maithili, Nepali area. Going forward, we expect to have, in the next few months, probably about 20,000 children using these books. But again, how quickly we can integrate these with existing programs, as these books have just been finished. So we're just at that stage. The potential is huge, the demand is there, but it will take a little bit of time to get them out there and get them in use.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
yeah, in Bangladesh, these books will be utilized in the multimedia classrooms, and so far in Bangladesh, around 15,000 multimedia classrooms has been established, and in the pipeline there are more 50,000 more multimedia classroom will be established within 1 or 2. So these will be the main delivery channel for our ebooks, and we hope that when the A2I will publish all the books in their teachers portal, so any teacher can use these books. This is our plan, and within 1 or 2 years, 100,000 people, students will be in contact with this kind of books.
Thank you so much. I don't see more questions. Maybe they will come at the end of the presentation. So let's go to the following section where our Bangladesh team is going to share on the enabling riders model cost analysis to know how costful the books were.
Yes, per book cost, as we identified in the 3 areas, mainly book development is a huge process, book development, book review, and the book illustration. So as I told you before that we have to replace maximum illustrations. So we did the illustrations for all the books, all the pages, and we have a very rigorous type of review, and we involve the government teachers for the book development, and there are a lot of specialists work with us. So these actually we calculate this, and then we found that 200 books, it cost $150 per book. And the area, as we identified that the project staff salary and benefits was the most expensive area. And that was another reason that the project was funding was stopped in the middle, and 3 months extra salary was paid for the project staff. And the reason for this kind of costing was the illustration. Mainly the illustration cost was very high. So these are the cost analysis.
Thank you. And what about Nepal?
Thank you, Limo. So interestingly, I could claim that it's a very cost-effective model that Nepal has gone through. So per book, we calculated $20. We have, as mentioned, we have developed 1,438 titles. So this cost includes dialect mapping that I have mentioned. So 6 dialect mapping workshops we have conducted, and writing workshop. So for the book writing workshop, we have to cost our travel, accommodation, lodging, fooding, so everything for the writers, and book review meetings and workshop that has been gone through the process, and so book editing, proofreading, and this process cost has been calculated. So we have developed. So while we have we calculated the cost of this book development. It means this one book has to go through to finalize the book. So it went through several processes from the direct mapping to finalization.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Sima or Shenawaz. I think Sima, can you let the participants know when you say cost per book, what do you really mean? A cost per book.
Cost, so it's $20 per book, per title. So it's not a book, it's a title. So we also call a book, it's a title. As I mentioned, so it has gone through the several processes to finalize the titles. Yeah.
Thank you. Because I asked that
I think we need to clarify here, you know, these costs that were provided by the project were fairly minimal. So the office running costs, for example, and those things were borne by World Education. So the cost of just producing the books is covered here.
Yeah.
And Bangladesh's big cost was in the artwork. Now, we had 7 languages, and there was a lot of requests to do local art, but we simply didn't have the budget to do that. So again, the cost estimate, there has to be an understanding that you would need to have more cost if you're going to produce localized art. And that was a challenge because so many titles, there's simply no budget to do that.
Yeah. In addition to that, in some languages, we were succeeded to mobilize a volunteer or illustrator, a student illustrator in some languages only. That was possible for every languages. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the cost, the unit cost here we are talking about is a unit cost per title, not per copy of a book. And the title can create.
It's a title, unit cost per title.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Shenawaz, what is happening in Bangladesh in terms of scale up and integration of these materials you have created?
Yeah, I like to pass my colleague from A2I to talk about their plan about the scale up.
For the dissemination purpose, we are thinking of teachers portal to reach all the teachers who have network access, and we have a offline content mechanism, so we can send the offline content to the teachers through our field level education officials and our digital centers as well. And regarding the training dissemination, as I have already shared that we have a 2 weeks ICT in education basic training. So we have already included this Bloom software based SRM development training there. So the teachers who are participant in that training workshop, they are now learning how to develop, how to use Bloom software and how to develop this kind of SRM using this software. So now it is being implemented throughout the country. So under our next PEDP 4, I mean Primary Education Development Project 4, all teachers will be trained. So this is the training dissemination plan as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Afzal Bhai. Now I'd like to request Mr. Shahid from UNESCO Dhaka office. He will explain about his plan of the scale up of this.
Yeah, thank you. Currently, we are providing support Bangladesh government to take the non-formal education development program. It will be a national program for adult education and livelihood skills training. And already the example of our piloting has been considered in planning the national development program. That's non-formal education development program. And under this program, this training will be embedded in that literacy facilitators and material developers. So it will be a great impact of this piloting phase. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think this is all from our scale up.
Thank you, Shanawaz.
Right.
Now let's hear from Nepal. Scale up and integration opportunities of these materials we have created in Nepal.
Thank you, Limo and colleagues. So for scale up and integration for this enabling writers title, so right now, so we are adopting some process and titles. So we can see that there is a larger opportunity for scaling of this idea and this model. For example, in Nepal, so 70% of students speak language other than Nepali. So in grade 1, that is the situation here in Nepal. So here we need larger number of titles in the local languages. So you can see the opportunity there. We can use that develop under the enabling writers, or also we can develop new titles using Bloom software. So language 2 speakers have considerably poor learning outcomes in the national program. Recently, we the early grade reading program, so national early grade reading program published assessment, midline assessment. So it has said that for example, language 1 learners, their learning standard, if you see, like 5.4% in grade 1, 8.7% in grade 2, similarly 12.8% in grade 3. And for whereas language 2 learners has secured like 1.2% 2 in grade 1, 1.4 in grade 2, and similarly 4.5 in grade 3. So it's like, so children who speaks Nepali as a language 2, their learning outcome is considerably very poor. So here also we need we can see that there is a this developed title in local languages can support to develop learning and competency in those areas. So Tharu learner using mother tongue has major gains in the similar to Nepali language speaker. So in our previous project in Tharu area, so we used the assessment that we, so using of Tharu materials and using of the medium of instruction of Tharu has indicated that children gain the major achievement. So huge need for these materials that be made available in specific languages areas. For example, so these are the languages areas. Also, here in Nepal, we hardly find the standard book title, so that develop reading competency of children in early grades. For example, decodable and label titles, consider maintaining the national standard, and in local languages, these huge need are, we can huge needed is here we can see. So Nepal is currently practicing federal structure. So under the federalism, so local governments are so right holder and the authorized government that they can conduct a training and develop titles, local titles. So in this condition, in this situation, local curriculum and content is a priority. So local government can use a Bloom software to enable capacity to develop titles, based on their context, based on the content they need. So these are the scale of opportunity, and we can integrate opportunity this enabling writers model idea to in this area. So I would say like.
Thank you, Sima. Thank you so much. Now, let's hear lessons learned in Bangladesh in regard to the project's implementation. Nawaz?
Okay, so lessons learned. One of the good lesson we learned, that is the involvement of the all stakeholders, including the government, in the whole process. Because ultimately, our plan was to introduce these books for the primary school students, and most of the primary schools is run by the government. In that case, we thought that government stakeholders, that means the DPE, the Director of Primary Education, who was the administration, who looks about the administration of the whole school, and the NCTP, who prepared the textbooks, and the NGOs and the UNICEF, UNESCO, and others. All these stakeholders in primary education, they were involved. And this involvement actually gives us a very good result. Whenever we asked the DPE to allow their government school teachers in our 5 days training, then review workshops, then again in the review workshops, we got full support from them. So this is one of the learning, that if you want to make this kind of a project successful, we need to involve the stakeholders. And the other thing is the professional knowledge and attitude of the teacher and writer is the key, because people have to understand the need for the decodable and label books, because whenever there is a book available in the market, teachers think about this is the supplementary books for the children, but they have a lot of difficulty when they read any kind of a books, because they cannot read it. For the early grade students, we need to develop very specifically designed books, that is decodable book and label books. And not only development, it has to be used in the school and in a proper way, because whenever there are some books, our teachers, they try to use these books in the schools, but the students in the early grade, they cannot read these books. So that kind of professional attitude, knowledge about the decodable book and label book is very important. And since we developed in Bangladesh, we developed the ICT materials, that means the ebooks. So ICT awareness, that ebooks, how powerful is the ebooks, that kind of a things, and institutional readiness, whether they should use their multimedia classroom for this kind of supplementary material. That is very important, because in the recent study, we saw that there is around 20 million primary school children in Bangladesh, and around 8 million is reading in class 1 and 2. So huge number of school children, and it is not possible for government, for the other stakeholders to develop huge number of supplementary materials, because textbooks can be one, but supplementary materials should be many. So in that case, the ebook is the only solution in Bangladesh, that we strongly believe. And book writing principles, that is also very important, because every country has their unique structure of the language, and based on that, we need to develop a very specific principles. And decodable book writing principle is much more complex than the level book writing principles. So we have to develop the book writing principles. This is very important. And we have to consider the language and competency standard. And in our field test, we saw that teachers and students, they prefer the color illustrations, because all our textbooks is 4 color. So that's why when they see that our books are in one color, so they were demanding that there should be color books. And ebooks was very attractive and cost effective. Cost effective in that sense that we can reach millions of students through the e-books, through internet and through multimedia classroom. And ebook is attractive because in many parts of the Bangladesh, there are the rural schools, they do not have any other book than the textbook. In that case, when they see that kind of a huge number of books, a huge variety of illustration, huge variety of contents, so it becomes very attractive for the students. And we found that Bloom software is really very user-friendly. We thought in the beginning that it will be very difficult for our teachers to write the books, use the Bloom software, but it is found in UNESCO study also, and in our experience also, Bloom software is really user-friendly.
Thank you so much. And what recommendations do you have?
Yeah, recommendation is also, unlike with our learnings, that the book writing principles and development process should be based on the students' level of the students, because we actually identify the government school teachers. There are other type of school teachers, private school teachers and other school teachers. So for whom we are developing the principles, we have to consider these things. This is one of the recommendations. And expansion of multimedia classroom and readiness to use those books in the class. This is also very important, and that kind of readiness and expansion of multimedia classroom depends on the government policy. In Bangladesh, we have a very supportive ICT policy. That's why our internet is expanding very rapidly. At the same time, multimedia classroom is expanding throughout Bangladesh very quickly. So that kind of a readiness is very important. And the piloting, there was no provision in our project for piloting. We just developed the books and sent it for the field testing. But whenever there is a provision for piloting of the books in, say, for few schools, then school teachers, along with the administration of the schools, they will also see that the effect of this kind of books. So impact of this kind of books. So we developed the books, we field tested these books, but there was no piloting stage. So piloting is also very important to attract the policymakers, to attract the school administration for use of this kind of books. And as you mentioned that we trained the teachers, but there is no follow-up from our side, from the project side. So we personally, we are following up with the teachers, but there should be some kind of a follow-up for the teachers, because 100 teachers and material developers, they're trained on this Bloom software. They have to follow these things. They have to develop more books for that. That kind of follow-up is not designed in the project. And there are some problem with the linguistic problems. Say, for example, in Bangladesh, there are a lot of common type fonts. These are not actually suitable for the Bloom. Bloom has to use some kind of a specific things. So that kind of a problem we report beforehand with the SIL. This is one of the thing, and the provision of more country-specific illustrations. So now in Bangladesh books, hundreds of thousands of illustrations is uploaded. In that way, Nepali books, the local illustrations are uploaded. So this is actually making the Bloom illustrations, will be more illustrations available in the coming days. And documentation dissemination, as I can honestly say that there was no formal way of discussion and dissemination during the countries where this project was implemented. So we did it in our own way, Nepal did it in their own way, Philippines did it in their own way, but there should be some kind of a regular sharing of experience and the learnings that would have been better for the next phase of this kind of a development. And USAID, in every country, USAID play a very big role. So USAID's involvement in the policy level to influence the government, to influence the other donors, as well as influence the departments responsible for this kind of intervention should be very much welcome. And I think UNESCO, USAID should play a very strong role to disseminate these learnings of different countries.
Thank you, Shanawaz.
Thank you.
And now we are going back to Nepal to hear on the lessons learned.
It was, in overall, it was a very great experience for Nepal. So major point for the lessons learned, I would like to share through the slide. We realized that dialect mapping is mandatory. So to select the appropriate dialect for the book writing, as well as advocating with the local language expert to see the reading from children's learning perspective rather than language preservation. Language matter here in Nepal is a very sensitive issue, and the linguists and the language expert, mostly they focus on the language preservation perspective. They don't see the children's learning perspective. So doing dialect mapping, so involving them to go through the process, and so that really helped them to understand why the learning in first language is important for the education perspective. So that is very so essential thing we have learned. And including ordinary teachers in the book writing process is very effective here in Nepal. So early grade reading program is going on, and so many NGOs and INGOs are also implementing early grade reading activities here. So involving the teacher who are teaching in early grade, and also another point is teachers who receive the training and the on-site technical support on early grade. So involving those type of experienced teachers is very effective and helpful. They understand about the reading, what is a decodable, what is level readers, and so why limited letters are very important in decodable stage to writing a book. And so this kind of understanding is very helpful. So these are the lessons, and so I would say like more than 50% teachers were participated in the book writing workshop as a writer. And so another lessons learned is scope and sequences and parameters should be finalized before the writers workshop, and should involve the government. So authority, so authorized agency, curriculum development center, and the language commissions. They are the authorized agency for the language stuff here in Nepal. And so involving them from the beginning, from the starting of developing scope and sequences and parameters, and that is very effective. And also for the field testing, yes, as Senawa says, like book piloting, book testing is very important to, you know, see whether the books are maintaining the standard or not. However, I would like to share, say like, so testing book in a limited time may not give us much information as we expect. So for this, at least one academic year, we need to test the book, whether these books are relevant or helping to develop children's reading skills. So those kind of aspects would be so better to know from the piloting. So these piloting tests we have conducted in short time, limited time. So that also provided us very general idea. It doesn't tell us the specific ideas. So this is something. And another, so here in Nepalese context, it is possible to mobilize illustrator, volunteer illustrator. So student from the fine art, they are ready to help, but very nominal, modest resource for example, for travel and some food and snacks. So that should be provided to those volunteers. So so in nominal cost, we can mobilize volunteer illustrator, but still there is some resources is required. And for the book uploading, so we faced a challenge. It took a longer time to upload books. So better, so it would be good to, you know, so have a very faster and easy alternate for the book uploading process. So as I mentioned in lessons learned section, so a recommendation also, we found the dialect mapping, and for the dialect, it is very essential for so for the book writing. So for dialect mapping, it would be good to use social mapping tool for the participatory rural appraisal, that kind of research tool. And residential workshop. So we followed the residential workshop, and in Nepal, same as in Bangladesh also. So we conducted 5 days residential workshop. So that became very effective to produce quality books, because all pedagogy trainer and technology trainer and program manager, government representatives. So all together they could work till morning to evening, and so they could focus on book writing. And so in that moment, so it would be good to give that momentum to produce quality book. So instead of having phase wise 2-3 time phase training and the workshop. So yeah, selecting writers who has a computer skill and has a knowledge and skill on early grade is essential. So that is our recommendation. And template software should be in local language and recommendation from our side. Another recommendation would be considering the language and geographical area. So it was the challenge we have faced here. So power backup and computers should be ensured before the selection of works of the because this is the model we use the computer and the power to write a book. So having this stuff in place and ensuring the power backup at least for 12 hours is very essential. So these are the recommendations from our side.
Thank you, Sima. Thank you so much for the lessons learned and the recommendations. And now we are coming to an end of our presentation. If we would like to get more details from Nepal or from Bangladesh, you can use the emails indicated there for Shinawaz and for Sima. And the question is, is coming from Kumio. Did you also train illustrators and designers for developing the books, or only the authors? Shinawaz, would you like to respond to that?
In Bangladesh case, illustrator actually joined in our in the course training course, not to train them because they help us in drawing the illustrations, but at the same time they actually get a lot of insights from our side for what should be the type of the illustration for the early grade students. So in that way, they helped us, the local illustrators. At the same time, they get some kind of a knowledge from our side that what should be the what are the criteria to be followed when they draw the illustration for the children, especially the early grade children.
Okay, Sima, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so we would love to, involve them in the writing workshops. But as I mentioned earlier, in some languages, some illustrators were participated in the training. For designers, so we didn't involve the designers because Bloom is itself is a book writing software. Designing wasn't required in the process. For the illustrator, it's good to so involve them in the writing process so that they could get a sense that which illustrator they have to produce for which content. So that would be very helpful.
Okay, another question: how the teachers will receive the enabling writers training through teacher training manual? I think this question was for Nepal or for Bangladesh. They're asking how the teachers will receive the enabling writers training through the teacher training manual.
For the primary school children, as my colleague from A2I explained, that their teachers training portal, teachers training manual, they already adopted this Bloom software. So that all the government school teacher, in turn, they will receive the training on how to develop books on using the Bloom software. And as well as the UNESCO Dhaka office, they are also utilizing the Bloom software, and they are expanding their training in the coming projects to train the adult literacy facilitators. Training manual, they are also preparing the training manual, how to use the Bloom. So these are the two of the way we are expanding the teachers training on Bloom software.
Okay, thank you. And there's another question here. Has the costing analysis taken into account the cost of consistent internet connectivity? I know there are also both online and offline aspects, but connectivity would seem important. Where special measures needed to ensure good connectivity, is there a risk of a digital device? That's a question from Dina again, Diana. Who would like to respond on that? Seema?
Here in Nepal, internet connectivity is pretty good. For the book writing, so we don't need, because we could do online, offline. For the posting, uploading books, it was required, but so it was good. So we didn't face any problem on internet.
Thank you. So if there will be questions coming, as we close this webinar, we will send them to our panelists for them to respond in writing, and then we'll put them on the GRIN blog for you to get the feedback. Now we are coming to an end of this webinar. Thank you very much for all panelists, Shanawaz and Seema, and the team from UNESCO and I2I. And I would like to thank also the participants for joining to this webinar. This webinar has been recorded and will be available at the GRIN website in the few coming days with the presentation, but also the enabling materials are used in developing these materials for the 6 countries. The guides, the field testing guide, the project guide is also available on the GRIN website. So we will go on involving you in this kind of webinars for the other topics. So we would like to invite you to visit GRIN website regularly so that you keep posted on what webinars are coming next. So we are coming to an end, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lima.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shanawaz and team.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Limo. Bye.
Bye. Take care.